Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight our journey drifts into one of the most enduring mysteries of the human spirit. It is not a story of machinery or mathematics, nor of gleaming portals spinning with sparks of light. Instead, it is something far older and infinitely more intimate. It is the story of why we, as human beings, look at time with such longing, why we dream of bending it, escaping it, revisiting it, or rushing ahead to meet what lies beyond the horizon of tomorrow. Before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love it if you could take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy these quiet explorations of science and the human heart. And when you're ready, you can leave a comment sharing where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It is always a quiet delight to imagine this little constellation of listeners scattered across different cities and different hours, all gathering here for a soft moment of wonder. Now, feel free to dim the lights, maybe let a fan hum softly in the corner, and allow yourself to sink a little deeper into comfort. If your mind begins to wander at any point, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, unfolding the story at a pace that feels as gentle as moonlight on a quiet street. The thought that brings us here tonight is deceptively simple. It begins with a whisper that almost everyone has felt. What if I could go back? What if I could step forward? What if time were not a river carrying me one way, but a sea I could swim in, freely choosing the direction? This small, persistent question follows us throughout life. It appears when we recall an old memory with a sting of regret, or when we imagine a future we wish we could see more clearly. It appears when we replay conversations we wish we'd handled differently, or when we hold the hand of someone we love and wonder how many moments remain. It appears in the quiet hours, the reflective ones, when time feels less like a measurement and more like a presence sitting beside us. We seek time travel not because of shimmering machines, but because of something woven deeply into the human condition. Every one of us carries a mind capable of revisiting the past and rehearsing the future. Even as you lie here listening, your thoughts might be drifting backward to old moments, or drifting forward in gentle speculation. In a sense, we travel through time every day, not with engines, but with memory and imagination. And yet, despite this remarkable ability, we still yearn for something more, something real, something tangible, something that lets us touch what feels lost or glimpse what feels hidden. If you close your eyes for a moment, you might notice how time seems to behave differently depending on how you feel. Moments of joy pass swiftly, slipping by like sunlight through open curtains. Moments of sadness or fear stretch and slow, as if time itself thickens around us. Our minds do not measure time in steady beats the way clocks do. Instead, they paint it in colours and textures. A moment with someone we love can feel timeless. A moment of waiting can feel endless. Time is not only something outside us, it is something shaped by our emotions, our memories, our needs. Humanity's longing for time travel likely began with memories that felt too heavy to carry, and futures that felt too uncertain to bear. Ancient myths across cultures speak of heroes who journey backward to undo mistakes, or forward to seek wisdom. These stories were not about bending the laws of physics, they were about comforting the heart. They reassured us that perhaps the past was not entirely gone, and perhaps the future was not entirely unreachable. Even today, when we imagine stepping into another moment, whether it is a childhood afternoon or a distant century, we're expressing something gentle and vulnerable, a desire to understand ourselves more deeply. The past glows because it shaped us. The future calls because it defines us, and the present, though real and immediate, often feels like a thin thread stretched between two vast landscapes. Time travel in all its emotional forms becomes a bridge to understanding why certain memories still ache, a bridge to imagining who we might become, a bridge to comforting the parts of ourselves that still seek closure or clarity. Scientists who study the mind often describe memory as a kind of quiet reconstruction. When you recall a moment, you're not pulling a perfect photograph from storage. Instead, your brain gently rebuilds the scene, like an artist repainting a landscape from memory. The details shift, soften, and change each time. This is why the past feels alive, because we recreate it in the present. And when we imagine the future, the process is remarkably similar. The brain uses the same tools, the same regions, the same inner storyteller. In this way, remembering and imagining are almost siblings, two sides of the same inner movement. It is no wonder that dreaming of time travel comes so naturally to us. Our minds are already built for it. But even with this subtle inner gift, we still long for more. Perhaps it is because memory cannot bring back what was lost, only the impression of it. And imagination cannot guarantee what will come, only the outline of possibility. We stand between those two uncertainties, wishing for a clarity that remains forever out of reach. Time travel promises something irresistibly comforting. The idea that we could understand, fix, protect, or simply witness our lives from a vantage point beyond the present, not controlled by the clock, but free from it. As we settle deeper into this journey tonight, we'll explore why this longing exists, why it persists, and what it reveals about what it means to be human. For now, allow this thought to rest softly beside you. Our fascination with time travel is not a flaw or a fantasy. It is a quiet testament to how deeply we feel, how dearly we love, and how much we long to make sense of the stories we live. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and we can drift onward into the next part of our exploration. There is something quietly magnetic about the things we cannot touch. From childhood onward, our imaginations tend to drift toward the unreachable. The distant stars, the depths of the ocean, the mysteries just beyond the edge of what we understand. Time sits at the very center of those mysteries. It moves around us constantly, shaping every moment of our lives, yet it remains something we cannot hold, pause, or persuade. The more it slips through our fingers, the more deeply we wonder what it would feel like to step outside its flow. As you settle into a comfortable position, notice how your breath meets the rhythm of the moment you're in. Time is passing as softly as you're breathing. But the thought that lingers is this: what makes the unreachable so alluring? Why do our minds instinctively reach toward that which refuses to be grasped? Time, unlike a distant planet or an unexplored forest, is not a place we can simply travel to with enough courage or technology. It is the dimension that quietly carries us from birth through every season of life. And because it carries us without asking for permission, we feel the subtle urge to push back, even if just in imagination. Human beings have always been drawn to boundaries. When early explorers looked at the horizon, they wondered if there was something beyond it. When astronomers saw faint lights in the night sky, they imagined other worlds. Time represents a similar frontier, but an even more intimate one. You can look at your own reflection and see a younger version of yourself in the curve of your smile or the shape of your eyes, but you cannot reach out and touch that earlier moment. You can dream of your future self, the person you might become, but you cannot step into that imagined room and meet them. This distance, this soft barrier, creates a quiet ache, a curiosity tinged with longing. The impossible draws us in because it invites us to imagine a version of reality where limitations loosen. Time travel, in particular, becomes a symbol for the purest expression of freedom. Freedom from mistakes, freedom from uncertainty, freedom from the relentless forward motion that never pauses even for a heartbeat. In stories, people step through doors that lead to yesterday, or they ride machines that hum their way into tomorrow. These tales are enchanting not because of the mechanics, but because they whisper that perhaps the universe is more flexible than it seems. Perhaps time is not a locked corridor, but a vast ocean with hidden currents waiting to be discovered. Science, too, adds its own layer of fascination. When Einstein described time as something that could stretch and bend, like a soft sheet of fabric under the weight of a heavy object, it opened the door to a gentler view of reality. The idea was simple enough to picture. Imagine a blanket sagging under a round stone. Place a small marble nearby, and it will roll along the curved surface created by the stone's weight. This gentle image suggested that time was not rigid, but responsive. And though no equations or symbols are needed here, the picture alone is enough to make the impossible feel slightly more imaginable. It hints that the universe might hold secrets that are just out of reach, but not out of mind. When people hear about theories of time stretching or slowing near massive objects like stars or black holes, what often captivates them is not the physics itself, but the feeling behind it. The feeling that time might be more fluid than we once believed. Even the simple notion that clocks tick a little slower in higher gravity, or that light passing near a star drifts just slightly from its usual path, makes us wonder what else might be possible. And even though these effects are small and gentle, they remind us that the world does not always behave in straight lines. There are curves beneath the surface, quiet folds in reality that we're only beginning to understand. But the allure of the impossible is not only scientific or philosophical, it is deeply emotional. There are moments in life that feel unfinished, conversations that ended too abruptly, opportunities that slipped away before we could grasp them. The thought of travelling back, even just for a moment, carries the promise of closure. It offers a chance to say what we wish we had said, to choose differently, or simply to stand in a moment we cherished and savour it with the clarity we didn't have at the time. Similarly, travelling forward tempts us with the idea that we could soften the uncertainties ahead, that we could prepare for storms before they arrive, or glimpse joys that will one day brighten our path. The impossible is alluring because it represents hope. Not loud, triumphant hope, but a quiet, steady hope, the kind that whispers that life might hold more possibilities than the present moment suggests. Time travel becomes a symbol of that hope, a dream that we carry even though we know it may never take the shape of a machine or a doorway. The yearning alone is enough to reveal something profound about our nature. As your thoughts drift gently, you might notice that imagining time travel is less about breaking the rules of the universe and more about understanding the longing inside yourself. It is a longing to connect, to the past that shaped you, to the future that beckons you, and to the mysterious flow of moments that surrounds everything you experience. When we dream of bending time, we are really dreaming of meeting ourselves with more wisdom, more courage, or more tenderness than we had before. And so, the impossible holds our gaze not because we expect it to become possible, but because it reminds us that we are creatures of wonder. We reach beyond the edges of what we know, not out of frustration, but out of a quiet human desire to understand the shape of our own journey. Time travel is simply the form that this yearning takes, the soft intersection between hope, curiosity, and the ever-moving river of time. Whenever you feel ready, just let me know, and we'll drift a little deeper into our exploration, tracing the contours of memory and the gentle pull of yesterday. There is a certain warmth that lives inside our memories, a softness that settles over old moments like morning light drifting through a half-open curtain. Even memories that are imperfect or slightly blurred at the edges seem to carry a gentle glow. You might close your eyes and suddenly find yourself standing in an old classroom, or walking down a familiar street you haven't visited in years, or hearing the quiet laughter of someone you once knew closely. These recollections do not arrive as strict recordings. They drift into the mind as if carried by a slow, familiar breeze, and in that return there is a sweetness, sometimes tender, sometimes aching, that quietly reminds us why the past holds such power. As you settle more deeply into comfort, you may notice how memories rarely come back in straight lines. They shimmer, they shift, they arrive in pieces. A scent, a colour, a distant sound can unlock a whole chapter of your life without warning. This is one of the ways the mind protects us. Memories are not stored like photographs tucked neatly into boxes. They are living impressions, recreated each time we recall them. Neuroscientists sometimes describe the memory process as a kind of gentle redrawing, like an artist touching up an old painting. The brushstrokes change slightly every time, not because the artist is careless, but because the act of remembering depends on who we are in the moment we remember. If we are sad, the memory darkens. If we are hopeful, it softens and brightens. This natural reshaping is part of why the past appears so golden. We rarely remember the noise, the stress, the long waiting hours, or the small everyday frustrations of earlier years. Instead, the mind tends to hold on to flashes of connection, moments of meaning, simple joys that once felt ordinary but now feel extraordinary. A walk at dusk, a shared meal, the look on someone's face when they were truly happy. These fragments return not because the past was perfect, but because the memory has been polished by time. In this gentle polishing, nostalgia finds its roots. Nostalgia itself is a fascinating emotional experience. It carries a kind of sweetness that is laced with sadness, not painful sadness, but the feeling of standing on the threshold of a place you cannot step into anymore. The past is like a house whose lights are still glowing in your mind, even though its doors are now locked, yet the warmth spilling through its windows continues to call to you. This is why nostalgia often feels like a soft tug at the heart, a sense of being both close to something and far from it at the same time. For many people, nostalgia deepens during quiet moments, especially at night. Perhaps this is because the world slows down just enough for memory to rise gently to the surface. Or perhaps the stillness of night invites us to look inward where the past has always been quietly waiting. It is in these moments that people often say, "I wish I could go back for just a moment." Not forever, just long enough to feel that warmth again. Long enough to see someone they miss. Long enough to appreciate something they didn't realize was precious at the time. This longing is part of what fuels our fascination with time travel. It isn't the machinery or the spectacle that attracts us. It is the simple human desire to return to moments that shaped us, to stand once more in the presence of someone we loved, to say something we never said, to hold on to a fleeting moment that slipped through our fingers before we understood its worth. There is also another layer to this. Memory often feels fragile because it is so tightly connected to identity. We look back not only to revisit events, but to understand who we were, who we are, and how we became this version of ourselves. When we feel uncertain or lost, the past becomes a map. We return to it, hoping it will remind us of the path we walked, the values we held, the dreams we carried. Our memories, even the flawed ones, offer a sense of continuity. They tell us that we have lived through many chapters already, and that each one has shaped us in quiet ways. Interestingly, scientists who study the brain have discovered that remembering and imagining share many of the same pathways. When you think of a memory, your brain recreates a scene, and when you imagine the future, your brain does something remarkably similar. The only difference is that one scene is based on something that already happened, while the other is built from pieces of possibility. This means that when we drift into the past, we are also, in some gentle sense, preparing ourselves for the future. Nostalgia, then, is not simply longing. It is also guidance, a soft reminder of what matters to us, what we cherish, and what we wish to carry forward. But nostalgia can also hold a hint of sadness, especially when it involves people, places, or ages of life that will not return. There is a reason people often describe it as bittersweet. Sweet, because the memory still brings comfort. Bitter, because it cannot be touched again. This combination forms one of the deepest human wishes. The wish for just a little more time. Even a single minute can feel precious when we imagine standing again in the presence of someone we lost or someone we were. Time travel, in this emotional sense, becomes a way of honouring those feelings. It allows us to imagine that the past is not entirely gone, but perhaps waiting on the other side of a door we cannot quite open. As your thoughts wander gently, notice how the past feels like a place you can almost visit, even though it sits beyond the reach of your hands. It is not real in the physical sense, yet it remains vivid in the mind. This vividness reminds us that our longing for yesterday is not a flaw, it is a reflection of care. We only miss what once mattered. We only look back because we carry love, meaning and memory within us. And so, the glow of yesterday continues to call to us, not to trap us there, but to show us something about who we are and about the tenderness we feel when we think of all the moments that shaped our journey. If at any time you feel ready, just let me know, and we can drift deeper into the next part of this exploration, tracing how regret and the quiet wish for a second chance weave themselves into our fascination with time. There are moments in every life that linger in the mind longer than we expect. Little scenes that replay themselves softly when the room is quiet, or when the night feels especially still. Perhaps it was a conversation that ended too soon, or a choice made too quickly, or a door we walked past without opening. These moments have a way of returning, not because we want to suffer through them, but because the mind keeps searching for a gentler resolution. Regret is one of the most human emotions we experience, an echo that vibrates along the timeline of our memories. It doesn't shout, it murmurs, it asks, what if I had done it differently? And this question, small as it seems, becomes one of the strongest forces behind our longing for time travel. As you lean a little deeper into comfort, you may sense how regret arises not only from big mistakes, but also from the smallest of missed chances. A phone call we never made, a kindness we meant to offer, words we held back out of fear or uncertainty. We often imagine that regret is tied to dramatic crossroads, but more often it is woven into the quiet, ordinary choices, the ones that seemed unimportant at the time, yet glow with significance when we look back. This is why regret feels so personal. It connects us to versions of ourselves we once were, and to versions we wish we had been. Scientists who study human behaviour have found that regret serves an important purpose. Long before humans wrote stories or built cities, our ancestors depended on the ability to learn from mistakes. If someone hesitated at the wrong moment or misjudged a danger, the memory of that hesitation needed to stay sharp so the lesson would not be forgotten. Regret, in this sense, became a kind of quiet guardian. It nudged the mind to pay attention, to reconsider choices, to refine judgment. It was the emotional spark that encouraged growth and helped keep early humans alive. Even today, this instinct remains. The sting of regret is often a sign that a lesson is unfolding, one shaped by the desire to do better next time. But regret is not only about learning, it is also about longing. We do not simply want to avoid repeating mistakes. We want the opportunity to heal what feels unfinished. That desire to mend, to repair, to rewrite is what gives regret its emotional weight. When you replay a memory in your mind, notice how the scene often unfolds in slow motion. You imagine yourself speaking with more patience, or choosing courage instead of hesitation. You might picture yourself arriving a little earlier, noticing a little more, giving a little extra tenderness than you did in reality. In these quiet mental rehearsals, regret becomes a kind of gentle time travel. You're not returning to the moment, but you are revisiting the version of yourself who stood there. This longing for a second chance lies at the heart of many time travel stories. Not because humans wish to control the universe, but because we wish, in our softest moments, to be better than we were. Time travel becomes a metaphor for redemption, for the hope that mistakes do not define us, and that we could change the shape of a memory if given the chance. Even people who claim they do not believe in time travel often admit they would revisit at least one moment if they could. Not to change the world, but to whisper something kinder to someone they love, or to themselves. It is interesting to notice how regret does not always arise from doing the wrong thing. Often it arises from doing nothing at all. Psychologists call these missed actions, the moments where silence became the choice, or where inaction became a quiet turning point. These tend to haunt us more deeply because they leave an empty space in memory, a space where we imagine something meaningful could have happened if only we had stepped forward. When the mind drifts back to these spaces, it tries to fill them in. It imagines alternate versions of events, alternate lines of dialogue, alternate scenes. This is where the heart begins to weave what could have been with what was, and the space between those two versions becomes the source of emotional tension. You might notice that regret often brings with it a curious tenderness. Even when the memory carries sadness, there is a softness to it, as if the regret itself is trying to care for the person you once were. It reminds you that you didn't have the knowledge then that you have now. It acknowledges that you were doing the best you could with the emotions, fears, and limitations you carried. This tenderness is important. It shows that regret is not an enemy, but a quiet teacher. A part of you that wants to guide you toward choices aligned more closely with your values and your heart. Every regret carries a lesson, but it also carries a wish to repair the things we feel responsible for, a wish to reverse the small cracks in our personal history. This wish is deeply intertwined with the emotional fantasy of time travel. We imagine stepping into the past not with technical devices or futuristic machines, but simply with our present understanding, with the patience we have now, or the compassion we had not yet learned. The mind does not seek the spectacle of travelling through time. It seeks the possibility of forgiveness, of giving or receiving it. And yet, even while the past cannot be altered, something remarkable does happen when we revisit memories with fresh insight. Each time we recall a moment, we reshape it slightly. Not the event itself, but the meaning it carries. A mistake you made years ago may feel different today, not because the facts changed, but because you did. You grew, you learned, you softened. This changing landscape of meaning is a form of healing. It is not time travel in the literal sense, but it is something equally profound. You are rewriting the emotional imprint of the past, even if the events remain the same. As your breath settles into a slow rhythm, notice how regret is less about being trapped in the past and more about wanting to grow beyond it. It is a sign that you care deeply about your choices and their consequences. It is a signal that you wish to act with more wisdom, more courage, and more tenderness going forward. In this way, regret points you toward the future, even as it tugs you gently toward the past. And perhaps this is one of the quiet truths that fuels the dream of time travel. We do not seek to undo the past out of anger or despair. We seek to understand it, to honour it, and to make peace with it. The desire for a second chance is not a flaw. It is a reflection of the heart's ability to imagine a gentler version of our story. And that imagination, even without a machine, a portal, or a doorway, carries the quiet power to change how we move through the present moment. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and we can drift onward into the next part of our exploration, where the paths not taken begin to reveal their own emotional landscapes. There is a certain kind of sadness that doesn't come from anything we have lost, but from what never came to be. It hides quietly in the spaces between our choices, in the small pauses where life could have unfolded in another direction. Sometimes, without meaning to, we find ourselves thinking about the version of life we might have lived if one decision had tilted a little differently, or if one moment had opened instead of closed. These imagined paths have no physical form, no dates, no places we can visit, yet they feel strangely real, like faint echoes of a future we once believed in. This is the landscape of lost futures, the timelines that exist only in the soft architecture of the mind. And even though they were never lived, we often mourn them as if they were. As you relax a little more deeply into the quiet of this moment, you might notice how the mind drifts naturally toward possibility. Human beings are one of the few creatures capable of imagining themselves into the future, creating detailed scenes of who they might become, what they might do, and how their lives might unfold. This ability is both a gift and a weight. It allows us to plan, to dream, to hope, but it also means we carry shadows of futures that might never arrive. The mind builds these futures with the same gentle brushstrokes it uses to paint memories. It pulls colours from our desires, textures from our fears, and shapes from our experiences. When life chooses a different path, those imagined futures don't simply disappear. They linger, like rooms in a house we never entered but still know the outlines of. People often believe that regret is tied only to the past, but much of regret actually lives in the future, in the imagined paths we did not walk. Psychologists sometimes describe this as future grief, a quiet sorrow for the versions of ourselves that feel lost. You might have pictured a career that didn't happen, or a place you thought you'd live, or a relationship you believed would bloom. You might have imagined a creative dream, a conversation, a journey, a family, or simply a feeling of who you hoped you would become. When those possibilities shift or dissolve, the ache that follows isn't the same as losing something real. It is the ache of losing something potential, something that felt like it belonged to you even if it hadn't yet arrived. In moments of stillness, the mind sometimes returns to those futures, curious about the shape they might have taken. What if you had followed that instinct? What if you had said yes? What if you had turned left instead of right? These questions don't demand answers. They simply reveal how deeply we feel the pull of possibility. Just as the past holds memories that glow warmly in the dark, the future holds dreams that shimmer softly with both hope and loss. This is the quiet paradox of being human. We grieve things we never lived just as much as we cherish things we did. The desire for time travel grows from this paradox. When we imagine stepping into a machine or walking through a doorway that leads to another timeline, we're not only thinking about the past we wish to revisit, we're also yearning to peek into futures that slipped away. Time travel promises a moment of reunion, not with people or places we once knew, but with versions of ourselves we imagined becoming. It offers the illusion that we could step into one of those lost rooms and see what might have been waiting for us. Not to change our present, but to understand it more fully. There is a softness in this longing. It is not about dissatisfaction with life as it is. Rather, it is about honouring the vast landscape of dreams and hopes that shape us. Every person carries not just one possible future, but many. Some futures fall away quietly, others end abruptly, and some remain always just out of reach, like constellations that guide us even though we can never touch them. The grief for these futures is subtle, often unspoken, but profoundly human. Scientists who study how the mind imagines the future have found that we use the same regions of the brain that we use for memory. When we think of a future possibility, our brain constructs a scene in much the same way it reconstructs a memory. This is why imagined futures feel vivid, familiar, and emotionally charged. They're built from the same materials, fleeting images, emotional tones, the sense of what could unfold next. And when one of those imagined paths closes, the emotional impact can resemble the loss of something real. Not because the future existed, but because the hope attached to it did. Hope itself is a powerful force. It gives shape to our days, adds colour to our decisions, and creates meaning in moments that might otherwise feel grey or uncertain. When a hoped-for future dissolves, the space it occupied can feel suddenly empty. Time travel, in the emotional sense, becomes a way of stepping back into that space, not to reclaim it, but to acknowledge that it once mattered. This act of emotional acknowledgement is quietly healing. It reminds us that even paths not taken contribute to who we are, shaping our values, our resilience, and our understanding of ourselves. Lost futures can also carry a quiet beauty. They show us what we once longed for, what we dreamed of, what direction our hearts naturally lean toward. Even if those futures never materialized, the dreams themselves carried meaning. They helped us move forward, gave us clarity, or revealed desires we hadn't yet named. Sometimes a future falls away not because it was wrong, but because its purpose was to guide us for a little while, before gently stepping aside. As your breath settles into a calm rhythm, you might think of the futures you once imagined, not with sadness, but with a kind of tender curiosity. They are part of the story of your life, the unwritten chapters that still help shape the written ones. They remind you of the threads of possibility that run through every moment. And perhaps this is why the idea of travelling through time feels so deeply compelling. It is not an attempt to escape the present, but an attempt to honour the rich tapestry of potentialities that coexist within the mind. Time travel in this light becomes a way of acknowledging how vast the human experience truly is. We live not only in the moments we have lived, but also in the moments we imagined. We carry entire worlds within us, woven from memory, hope, regret, longing, and possibility. The futures that never happened are still part of that inner universe, shaping how we see ourselves and how we move forward into the unknown. When you feel ready, just let me know, and we can drift gently into the next part of our exploration, where fear, uncertainty, and the deep mystery of tomorrow begin to illuminate why the future calls to us as strongly as the past. There is a quiet moment that happens in every life, sometimes at the end of a long day, sometimes in the middle of an unexpected pause, where the mind drifts not backwards but forwards. It leans into uncertainty, like someone stepping toward a doorway where the light is too bright to see what lies beyond. The future has always held a certain pull, a mixture of hope, curiosity, and unease. We stand in the present moment, aware that time continues to unfold whether we're ready for it or not, and something within us whispers the familiar question, what comes next? As you settle more comfortably into your space, you might notice how the thought of tomorrow can create both comfort and tension. It can be soothing to picture a morning that begins gently, or a future self who handles things with more ease and confidence. And yet, the same forward gaze can stir a subtle anxiety, a quiet tremor that reminds us of the unknown. The mind tries to peer ahead, searching for patterns, clues, or signs, hoping to catch even a faint glimpse of what the next chapter might hold. This longing to see into the future is not new. It is woven into the earliest stories humans ever told. Ancient civilizations watched the stars, believing that the movement of celestial bodies might reflect events yet to come. Others studied the behavior of animals, the direction of the wind, or the shape of clouds, hoping to decode nature's quiet messages. Even today, we often read meaning into small signs, a sudden feeling, a dream, a coincidence, as if the universe left trail markers pointing toward our fate. Beneath all of these practices lies the same human desire, the wish for foresight, for clarity, for a sense of safety. Much of this longing can be traced to the way our minds evolved. Humans are one of the few species that can imagine themselves years, decades, or even lifetimes into the future. Neuroscientists have found that when we picture what might happen tomorrow or next year, our brain uses many of the same regions that it uses to remember the past. In other words, imagining the future is closely tied to the act of remembering. The mind takes pieces of what we have already lived, our experiences, our fears, our joys, and uses them as material to build possibilities. This ability is essential. It allows us to prepare, to plan, to make decisions that echo far beyond the moment. But it also comes with a cost. Because we can imagine the future so vividly, we can also fear it with equal intensity. The same imagination that lets us picture joy can also conjure worry. The same inner storyteller that weaves hopeful scenes can also unfold anxious ones. The mind becomes, in a way, its own fortune teller, one whose visions shift according to our mood, our needs, and the stories we carry. Uncertainty is the source of this tension. The future stands before us like a landscape covered in mist. We can sense its shape, but the details remain hidden. We know that challenges will come, though we do not know their faces. We know that beautiful moments await, though we do not know when or how they will arrive. This not knowing is what makes the future feel so powerful. It is both promise and question, both invitation and mystery. This mystery is a large part of why time travel captivates the human imagination. If we could step forward, even briefly, we imagine that the mist would part. We would see what choices lead to joy, what paths lead to sorrow, what dangers might be avoided, and what opportunities might be waiting quietly to be discovered. We picture ourselves arriving in a future room and greeting our future self, hoping to find reassurance in their eyes. Are they happy? Are they safe? Did things turn out all right? This emotional longing often outweighs the scientific curiosity behind time travel. It's not the mechanics we crave, it's the reassurance. Sometimes the longing for the future is tied to hope. We envision a life where we are more confident, more fulfilled, more at peace. We imagine goals achieved, relationships deepened, or challenges resolved. These soft visions give us direction. They create a sense of movement, a reason to rise each morning and continue forward. In this sense, dreaming of the future is a way of shaping it. The act of imagining is itself a form of quiet navigation. But other times, the longing is tied to fear. Fear of loss, fear of illness, fear of change, fear of the unexpected. Humans often seek glimpses of the future not for excitement, but for comfort, to know that we will have the strength to face whatever comes, to know that the people we love will be safe, to know that we will not walk alone through the storms ahead. The future feels heavy when we sense a challenge approaching, even if we cannot name it. This heaviness is what makes time travel fantasies feel so soothing. They allow us to imagine lifting the veil, even if just for a moment. Interestingly, the mind doesn't need a time machine to travel forward. It does this every day, often without us noticing. When you prepare for a conversation, rehearse what you might say, or imagine the reaction of someone you care about. You're stepping into the future in a gentle, quiet way. When you anticipate a joyful event, your mind paints a picture so vivid that you can almost feel it already. When you worry, the mind builds negative futures with the same intensity. This forward-drifting ability is deeply human. It reflects our need to understand, to predict, and to feel that we have some control over the unfolding story of our lives. And yet, even with all the imagining we do, the future remains beautifully open. That openness is both intimidating and freeing. It means that life can surprise us. It means that joy can appear in unexpected places. It means that one decision, one conversation, or one moment of courage can change the direction of everything that comes next. The unknown is not only a source of fear, it is also a source of wonder. As your breath falls into a steady rhythm, notice how the thought of tomorrow feels within your chest. It may carry a soft brightness, or a quiet weight, or something in between. This feeling is at the heart of our desire for time travel. It is not merely curiosity about distant centuries or faraway civilizations. It is the deeply human wish to understand the path ahead of us, to feel prepared, to feel reassured, to feel that the future is not something we walk into blindly, but something we can greet with a sense of calm. And perhaps this is the quiet lesson beneath our fascination with the future. We do not seek to control it as much as we seek to make peace with it. Time travel, in the emotional sense, becomes a way of imagining that peace, a soft glimpse, a gentle reassurance that whatever lies ahead will unfold in a way we can meet with presence and resilience. When you're ready, just let me know, and we can drift further into the next part of our exploration, where the dream of a perfect tomorrow begins to reveal why hope shapes our desire to step into the future. There's a certain beauty in the futures we imagine for ourselves, those gentle, idealized visions where life unfolds without the complications, uncertainties, or quiet struggles that sometimes settle into our present. These imagined tomorrows glow with a kind of softness, a kind of promise. They live at the edges of our thoughts like warm lanterns guiding us forward, even on days when the road feels unclear. And it is within this glow that we find one of the deepest reasons why humans dream of stepping into the future, the temptation of a version of life where things simply work. As you continue to relax into the quiet of this moment, you may notice that your mind naturally drifts toward things you hope for. Maybe it's a dream you've carried for years, or a change you've been yearning for, or simply a feeling of peace you want to experience more fully. These hopes form the architecture of your imagined future. They become small, luminous shapes in your mind, comfortable, calming, and quietly motivating. Even if the path to them is uncertain, the vision itself offers comfort. This is one of the quiet gifts of imagination. It allows us to sculpt gentle alternatives to our present reality, not as a form of escape, but as a reflection of what we value most deeply. When people imagine a perfect tomorrow, they're often imagining a life aligned with their truest needs, time with people they love, a sense of belonging, a feeling of stability, a space where they can breathe without worry. These visions are not grand fantasies. They are usually simple, human wishes, yet they carry a profound emotional weight. Time travel in this sense becomes symbolic. It represents the desire to step directly into those hopeful scenes, bypassing the obstacles that stand between us and the future we desire. We imagine skipping past years of uncertainty, or avoiding moments of struggle, or fast-forwarding to a chapter where things feel gentler and more complete. This is not laziness or impatience. It is an expression of longing, a longing for clarity, fulfillment, and relief. But it is important to understand that when we fantasize about a perfect tomorrow, what we are really longing for is not perfection itself. Perfection is often cold and rigid, a kind of unattainable symmetry. What we long for is something far more tender: ease, a life where our efforts are met with progress, where our relationships are nourished by mutual care, where our burdens feel a little lighter. Imagining such a future does something quietly powerful. It shapes the way we move through the present. Scientists who study the psychology of hope have found that when people imagine positive futures in vivid detail, their minds respond as if those futures are slightly more attainable. The brain creates a gentle pathway, a kind of emotional map that helps direct choices, habits, and actions in ways that align with those imagined possibilities. It's not magic, but a subtle collaboration between imagination and behaviour. The future becomes a seed we water with intention. This is why imagining a better tomorrow can be both comforting and motivating. It gives us something to move toward, even if the vision changes over time. Just as plants turn instinctively toward the light, humans turn instinctively toward hope, and hope often appears in the form of these imagined tomorrows, warm, inviting, filled with a sense of potential. Of course, not all visions of the future are hopeful. Sometimes they are shadowed by worry or fear. But even then, the desire to peek ahead comes from the same emotional root: the wish to understand, to prepare, to feel equipped to navigate whatever lies ahead. The unknown can be intimidating, and imagining a perfect tomorrow becomes a way of balancing that fear. It is a reminder that good things are possible, that life can shift in gentle ways, that the present moment, no matter how heavy, does not define forever. These hopeful visions become even more important during times of difficulty. When life feels uncertain, the future can become a refuge of possibility. People imagine places they want to visit, goals they want to reach, or connections they want to deepen. They imagine moments of laughter, calm mornings, new beginnings. In this way, the future becomes a kind of emotional home, an anchor that keeps us steady when the present feels stormy. Time travel stories often amplify this longing. Characters step forward into bright, harmonious worlds where problems have been solved, where people live in unity, where technology has made life safer or kinder. These depictions are not about predicting what will actually happen, but about reflecting what we wish could happen. They show us our hopes in a magnified form, a future without conflict, a future where humanity has grown wiser, a future where peace is not a dream but a daily reality. What these stories reveal is that our fascination with the future is not rooted in curiosity alone. It is rooted in yearning. When we imagine travelling forward through time, we are reaching toward a version of ourselves that we believe could exist, a more patient self, a more courageous self, a more fulfilled self. Even if that version is far away, imagining them helps us feel connected to the possibility of growth. And yet, even as we dream of perfect tomorrows, there is a soft truth hiding beneath the surface. The future is never fixed. It shifts with each decision, each moment of clarity, each gesture of kindness. The imagined future is not a destination to be reached, but a companion that walks beside us, encouraging us to keep moving. As your breath settles into an easy rhythm, think of the futures you've imagined, not with pressure or expectation, but with gentle curiosity. What do they say about what matters to you? What do they reveal about the life you hope to build? These imagined worlds are not illusions. They are reflections of your deepest values, your desire for love, for meaning, for peace, for connection. The temptation of a perfect tomorrow is not a fantasy to escape into. It is a quiet message from your heart about the kind of life you wish to live. And in that sense, the wish to travel through time becomes less about prediction and more about understanding. It shows us the direction we hope to walk, even if the path remains shrouded in mist. When you're ready, just let me know, and we'll drift gently into the next part of our journey, where the future becomes not just a place of hope, but a place where hidden dangers and ancient instincts shape our longing to see what comes ahead. There is a quiet instinct within every human being, an old and ancient one, that stirs whenever we sense danger. It is the instinct that makes us pause before stepping into a darkened room, that quickens our heartbeat when something feels off, and that urges us to scan the horizon for signs of what might be coming. Long before we had words to describe it, long before we understood anything about the mind or the body, our ancestors learned to imagine threats before they arrived. This ability to mentally step into possible futures was essential for survival. Even today, it remains one of the deepest reasons why we long to peer ahead in time. As you rest a little more deeply, you may notice how often your mind rehearses things before they happen. You imagine conversations before you have them. You picture different outcomes when facing a challenge. You walk yourself through possibilities when something makes you uneasy. These moments are subtle, yet they reveal something extraordinary. The human brain is constantly travelling forward, creating small simulations of what might come next. It does this not to frighten us, but to protect us. Scientists who study dreams and imagination have found that the mind is exceptionally skilled at turning uncertainty into rehearsal. In dreams, for example, people often encounter stressful or confusing situations, running late, losing something important, facing unexpected dangers. Some researchers believe that these dream scenarios act like soft training grounds. They give the brain a place to practice problem solving when the stakes are low. Instead of equations or formulas, the brain uses imagery and emotion to prepare us for the real world, as if whispering, "Let me show you what might happen, so you can be ready." This ability is part of what makes us fascinated by the idea of time travel. If we could visit the future, even briefly, we imagine that we could shield ourselves from harm. We could avoid choices that lead to pain. We could foresee challenges before they arrive. We could guide ourselves with clarity instead of fear. In this way, time travel becomes less of a cosmic adventure and more of an emotional safeguard. It symbolizes the wish to protect ourselves and the people we care about. The desire for foresight grows even stronger when the world feels uncertain. A sudden illness, a financial worry, a relationship in transition, a career shift that feels both promising and frightening. In moments like these, the future looms larger than usual. We imagine storms that might gather beyond the horizon. We wonder what we will need to navigate them. We try to anticipate outcomes, not because we expect catastrophe, but because we hope to stay steady through whatever comes. This instinct is deeply rooted in our biology. When early humans faced danger, a predator in the grass, a shifting climate, a scarcity of food, their survival depended not only on reacting quickly, but also on predicting what could happen next. Those who imagined threats before they appeared often survived long enough to pass on their instincts. Over countless generations, this anticipatory ability evolved into something more complex. It became the foundation of caution, planning, worry, and preparation. The same mental tools that helped our ancestors foresee danger are now the tools we use to think about everything, from relationships to careers to the global future. But with this ability comes emotional weight. The more vividly we imagine possibilities, the more we feel responsible for navigating them. When you picture a difficult future, your body may respond with a slight tightening in the chest or a subtle shift in breathing, as if preparing for something real. This is not a flaw. It is a sign of how closely imagination and emotion intertwine. The brain treats imagined scenarios with nearly the same seriousness as real ones. In this sense, the desire to see the future becomes a form of emotional self-defense. If we knew what was coming, we believe we could adjust ourselves accordingly. We could brace for impact. We could soften the blow. We could take action early enough to prevent things from falling apart. This is why people often say, "If only I knew what would happen." It is not certainty they want, but a sense of safety within that certainty. Time travel stories often reflect this longing. Characters journey into the future to discover whether their world survives, whether humanity thrives, whether their loved ones are safe. They search for signs of stability in the midst of chaos. And even though the settings may involve machines or portals, the emotional heart of these stories is simple: a desire for reassurance. Interestingly, the human mind already provides glimpses of the future in its own quiet ways. When we plan ahead, we're making small predictions. When we worry, we're rehearsing potential outcomes. When we hope, we're imagining scenes that have not yet unfolded. This natural forward drifting is an intimate kind of time travel, one that requires no machinery and no bending of cosmic laws. It is something we do instinctively, constantly, gently. But even with this internal ability, there are limits. No matter how vividly we imagine the future, we can never know it exactly. There will always be surprises, some painful, some beautiful. And this unpredictability is what makes time feel both frightening and precious. The unknown carries danger, but it also carries potential. It holds not only the storms we fear, but also the quiet joys we have not yet discovered. There is a tenderness in acknowledging that we cannot protect ourselves from everything. Some challenges arrive without warning. Some moments test us in ways we could never prepare for. Yet we survive them. We adapt. We learn. We grow stronger and softer at the same time. And it is this resilience that ultimately carries us through uncertainty. Not foresight, but the ability to navigate the unknown with presence and courage. As your breath finds an easy rhythm, you may reflect on the times when life surprised you, moments when something difficult arrived suddenly, or when something wonderful unfolded unexpectedly. You made your way through those moments not because you knew the future, but because you met each unfolding chapter with the quiet strength you had at the time. This is the true shield we carry, not the ability to predict, but the ability to respond. Perhaps this is why our fascination with time travel remains so strong. It reflects our longing for safety, for protection, for a sense that we can meet tomorrow with confidence. But it also reveals the quiet truth that even without time travel, we are more capable than we realize. The future may be hidden in mist, but we walk into it with every breath. And within us there is something steady enough to face whatever that future contains. When you're ready, just let me know, and we'll drift gently into the next part of this exploration, where the mind reveals its hidden time-traveling abilities, not through technology, but through memory, imagination, and the quiet architecture of thought. There is something quietly astonishing about the way your mind moves. Even as you rest in this moment, your thoughts have the ability to drift backward to childhood afternoons or leap forward into imagined tomorrows. You can revisit the warmth of an old memory or picture the light in a room you have not yet entered. This ability is so natural that we often overlook how extraordinary it truly is. The human brain is, in a very real sense, a time machine, one that doesn't rely on metal, engines, equations, or glowing portals, but on a delicate architecture woven from memory, imagination, and emotion. If you pause for a moment and allow your mind to wander, you might notice how easily it slips between times. A familiar scent might carry you back to a moment years ago. A quiet hope might lead you into the future, imagining how life might unfold. These movements feel effortless, like drifting on a gentle current, and yet they rely on some of the most complex abilities the brain possesses. Scientists call this mental time travel, and it comes in two interconnected forms. The first is episodic memory, the ability to recall specific events, places, and sensations from your past. Not just the broad strokes, but the vivid details, the sound of someone's voice, the warmth of afternoon sunlight, the feel of air against your skin. The second form is episodic future thinking, the ability to construct scenes of experiences that have not yet happened. You can imagine a future conversation, picture yourself in a different city, or visualize the emotions you might feel in a moment that has not yet unfolded. What is remarkable is that both abilities rely on the same internal tools. One of the key regions involved in this process is a seahorse-shaped structure deep inside the brain called the hippocampus. Instead of thinking of it as an anatomical term, imagine it as a quiet artist working at a small desk, piecing together fragments of sensory impressions into full scenes. When you remember something, the hippocampus does not retrieve a perfect recording. Instead, it rebuilds the scene from pieces, sound here, colour there, a feeling woven in. When you imagine the future, it uses the same fragments, but rearranges them into something new. It paints possibilities. Close by is another region, the prefrontal cortex, which you might imagine as a gentle narrator sitting beside the artist, offering meaning, context, and continuity. It ties scenes together. It reminds you of cause and effect. It helps you project consequences, possibilities, and emotional tones. Without this narrator, your memories would be scattered moments with no thread, and your imagined futures would be swirling images without direction. Together, the artist and the narrator allow you to move through time within your mind, creating a sense of personal continuity, a feeling of being the same you across years, even as everything around you changes. What makes this ability truly exceptional is that humans appear to be one of the only species capable of experiencing time so fluidly. Many animals remember certain kinds of information, where food is stored, how to return home, which paths are dangerous, but they do not seem to revisit their past with the emotional richness humans experience, nor do they imagine future scenes with the same vividness. We, on the other hand, routinely step into mental landscapes far from the present moment. Even in a single day, your mind might travel decades backward or decades forward without your body moving at all. You live in some sense in multiple times at once. This natural flexibility of mind is the foundation of our fascination with time travel. We dream of machines and portals because our inner world already knows what it feels like to move through time. Our mental time travel, however, is not bound by the strict rules of physics. It flows according to emotion, longing, curiosity, and memory. You can revisit a moment that never actually happened, a conversation that exists only in your imagination, just as vividly as one that did occur. You can picture distant futures that feel so real your heart responds, tightening with worry or softening with hope. In many ways, time travel fantasies are simply amplified versions of this natural talent. When you imagine stepping into the past to relive a cherished moment or correct a mistake, you're tapping into the same mental pathways used for memory. When you picture yourself stepping into the future to see how life unfolds, you're using the same pathways used for planning and anticipation. The difference is not in the brain's mechanism, but in the emotional weight you place upon it. Time travel stories take these internal abilities and turn them outward, giving them form and structure, the machine, the wormhole, the shimmering doorway, not because we need them to imagine time, but because we wish the inner experience could spill into the physical world. It is fascinating to realize that these mental abilities are active even when you're not consciously aware of them. Daydreams, small flickers of memory, quiet anticipations, they all rely on the brain's time-traveling architecture. Even dreams themselves can be seen as nightly journeys through time. In dreams, moments stretch, collapse, reorder, or repeat. Scenes blend past and future into one landscape. You might dream of someone you once knew standing beside your future self in a place that belongs to neither memory nor imagination. This fluidity is not random. It reflects the brain's ongoing effort to process experiences, integrate emotions, and weave meaning into your internal world. What is even more remarkable is that your brain cannot store time in the way a clock measures it. There is no mental shelf labelled 5 years ago or next month. Instead, the brain stores fragments, images, sounds, sensations, meanings, and then arranges them into something that feels like a timeline. Time, as you experience it internally, is constructed from pieces. It is a gentle creation, not a fixed recording. This is why memories shift over time, and why imagined futures can feel strangely familiar. The same materials are being reused, recombined, and reinterpreted. Perhaps the most profound aspect of mental time travel is the sense of coherence it provides. Humans need their lives to feel like a story. We need a beginning, a middle, and the sense of a future that is still unfolding. When events feel disconnected or when life changes suddenly, the mind reaches instinctively for meaning. It revisits memories. It imagines new futures. It attempts to stitch the pieces back together into a narrative that makes sense. Our desire for time travel is intimately tied to this wish for coherence, an inner harmony where the past, present, and future align into something understandable. As your breath slows and you drift gently through this moment, you might sense how quietly extraordinary your mind truly is. It moves through time with ease, carrying you through worlds within yourself. You don't need a machine to experience time travel. You do it every day, in ways so familiar you barely notice. The fantasies we create about travelling through time simply reflect the abilities we already possess, translated into stories and imagery. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and we can drift into the next part of our journey, where emotions begin to shape not only what we remember, but how time itself feels as it passes through us. There are days when time seems to pour through your fingers like water, impossible to hold, impossible to slow, slipping past before you've even had a chance to fully notice it. And then there are days when time feels heavy and slow, moving with the weight of thick fog. Moments of joy seem to vanish, while moments of fear or sadness linger, as if the world has stopped turning. You might remember a childhood summer that feels like it lasted forever, or a beautiful evening that disappeared in a blink. You might also recall a difficult hour that felt like an entire lifetime. This gentle distortion of time, its ability to stretch and collapse depending on what we feel, is one of the most mysterious aspects of being human. As you settle into stillness, it becomes easier to sense how emotion quietly reshapes the flow of your internal world. Scientists have long been fascinated by this phenomenon, and though the explanations involve complex systems in the brain and body, the essence can be described softly. When you feel threatened or overwhelmed, your body releases stress signals that heighten your awareness. Your senses sharpen, your attention narrows. The world seems to slow down, not because time itself changes, but because your mind takes in more information per second, carefully, examining every detail. It is a protective response, an ancient survival mechanism designed to help early humans notice danger and react with precision. Imagine someone walking through a dark forest thousands of years ago. A sudden sound, the snap of a twig, could signal a predator nearby. In that instant, the person's inner clock would shift. Their awareness would expand. Time would seem to stretch so they could choose the safest path. Today, the predators may be different. An unexpected phone call, a stressful meeting, a moment of emotional shock. But the internal response is similar. The body becomes vigilant, and the mind begins recording each detail more intensely. This makes a single minute feel much longer than it really is. Joy, on the other hand, has the opposite effect. When we feel safe, loved, or deeply engaged in something meaningful, our mind relaxes. It stops scanning the environment for threats and instead opens itself to the flow of experience. Information is taken in more gently, more softly. We're not counting seconds, we're living them. Because of this ease, time seems to pass quickly. A joyful hour can vanish like a single breath. A conversation with someone we care about may feel like it ends too soon, even if it lasted for hours. The mind in these moments is not analysing or defending, it is simply being. This ebb and flow of time perception is an intimate reflection of our emotional world. It explains why certain moments stay with us forever, while others fade into the background. It also helps reveal why we sometimes wish we could travel through time. If moments of pain feel too long and moments of beauty feel too short, it's natural to imagine a world where we could balance the equation, lingering longer in joy, shortening the span of fear, or revisiting times when we felt whole. This emotional shaping of time is closely tied to the chemicals that guide the body's responses, though these chemicals don't need to be described in technical terms. You might think of them as whispers carried through the bloodstream, signals that say, "Pay attention," or "You are safe." When these whispers shift, your perception shifts with them. The pacing of your internal clock is influenced by these gentle messengers, responding to the tides of your emotional life without requiring any conscious effort on your part. You may notice this in everyday moments. Waiting for test results or important news can make every second feel like an hour. Standing in line on a busy day can feel unbearable, even if only a few minutes pass. But being fully absorbed in a creative activity, a painting, a conversation, a book, or even a simple cup of tea, can make hours vanish before you realize it. This discrepancy reveals something essential. Time, as we experience it, is not measured only by clocks. It is measured by attention, emotion, and presence. The subjective nature of time can be comforting or unsettling. It means that the most painful experiences can feel endless. But it also means that the simplest joys, like sitting in the sun or hearing someone laugh, can stretch in memory long after they've passed. Our internal time, the soft clock inside our mind, runs according to emotion. And because emotion is fluid, time seems fluid as well. This fluidity contributes to our desire to understand and control time. When life feels overwhelming, we imagine slowing it down. When life feels precious, we wish to hold it tightly. When life feels uncertain, we wish to look ahead. And when life feels meaningful, we wish to revisit the moment. Time travel becomes a symbol of this emotional yearning, a quiet wish to bring balance to the way time feels. There are even moments when time seems to stop altogether. These are often moments of shock or awe. Shock creates stillness because the mind freezes, unable to process what is happening quickly. Awe creates stillness for the opposite reason. The mind opens so fully that it expands into the moment. Standing beneath a vast sky or hearing extraordinary news can suspend the usual flow of thought. Both experiences blur the boundaries of time, reminding us that what we feel shapes everything we perceive. This emotional elasticity is not a flaw, but a feature of being human. It allows us to savor the good, survive the difficult, and remember what matters. It also explains why dreams and memories often blend past, present, and future in unusual ways. The brain is not following a strict timeline, it is following emotion. Dreams can stretch moments into entire stories. Memories can telescope years into a single instant, and hopes can make the future feel closer than it is. The way time stretches and collapses within us reveals something tender, that we long for a sense of balance. We long for moments of joy to last, moments of sorrow to pass more quickly, and moments of uncertainty to become clearer. Time travel, in this emotional sense, becomes a way of imagining a world where our inner time and outer time align more harmoniously. As your breath moves softly in and out, notice how time feels right now, whether it is gliding gently or settling slowly. In your awareness of this flow, you can sense the subtle truth that time is not only outside you, but also within you. And it is this inner time, the one shaped by emotion, that makes the idea of moving freely through the past and future feel so profoundly appealing. When you're ready, let me know, and we can drift into the next part of our journey, where memory and imagination join together to build the landscapes through which our minds quietly travel. There is a quiet, intricate architecture inside your mind, built not from stone or metal, but from sensations, emotions, and meaning. Unlike a physical building, this inner structure is fluid. It rearranges itself constantly, reshaping the pathways you walk through when you remember your past or imagine your future. If you close your eyes, you might feel the subtle movement of your thoughts shifting between moments, stepping into an old memory, drifting into a future possibility, returning to the present. This movement is not random. It follows patterns, folds, and echoes created by the brain's remarkable ability to weave time from fragments. When you remember something, you're not pulling out a precise recording, you're recreating it. The brain stores impressions rather than complete scenes, and each time you recall an event, it assembles those impressions anew. A memory is rebuilt every time you visit it, like a painting that is gently touched up by a careful hand. Small details may change, the emotional tint may shift, the lighting of the scene may grow warmer or cooler depending on how you feel in the present. This is why memories can feel alive. They are not static, they breathe with you. This dynamic process also explains why two people can recall the same event so differently. Each mind stores impressions in its own way, shaped by unique experiences, fears, joys, and expectations. When the memories are reconstructed, they emerge through the lens of the person recalling them. A conversation that felt casual to one person may have felt momentous to another. A quiet moment that seemed simple in the past may come back years later with an unexpected tenderness. Memory is not a vault, it is a garden, living, growing, changing with the seasons of your life. The same architecture supports imagination. When you picture the future, your brain uses the same materials it uses to remember the past. It pulls from sensory fragments, emotional tones, and familiar patterns, rearranging them into new possibilities. You might imagine a conversation that hasn't happened yet, but the sound of the other person's voice comes from memory. You might picture standing in a place you've never been, but the light you imagine in that scene comes from moments you've already lived. The future, as your mind constructs it, is built from the same pieces as your past, just assembled into scenes that have not yet unfolded. This intertwined relationship between memory and imagination explains why the mind sometimes confuses the two. You might recall something that never happened or imagine something so vividly that it feels like a memory. This is not a flaw. It is a reflection of how closely these two experiences overlap. The brain does not have separate storage rooms labelled past and future. It has a single workshop where scenes are created and recreated from fragments scattered across your internal world. Dreams reveal this architecture vividly. When you dream, your mind becomes even more fluid, assembling fragments in combinations that would never occur during waking life. You might dream of walking through your childhood home while talking to someone you met only recently, or find yourself in a place that blends two distant locations into one seamless landscape. Time in dreams does not follow the linear sequence we experience during the day. Moments loop, jump, or collapse into one another. A single dream can carry you through an entire lifetime or trap you in a moment that feels endless. This fluidity reflects the brain's natural ability to rearrange time internally, an ability that dreams display without restraint. In many ways, dreams are the purest form of mental time travel. They allow the mind to visit moments that never happened, reconstruct moments that did, or create entirely new ones. They collapse the boundaries between past, present, and future into a single, drifting experience. Some dreams help you process memories, others help you rehearse for the future. Some simply give your mind space to explore, without the constraints of logic or chronology. Even nightmares, though frightening, often serve an ancient purpose. They prepare you emotionally for threats, teaching you how to navigate fear before the moment arrives. What is extraordinary is that the brain does all of this without any external cues. It builds its inner world from within, drawing on the architecture of neural pathways shaped by your experiences. Scientists sometimes describe the brain as a predictive organ, always guessing what will happen next, always testing those guesses against reality, always adjusting. But much of this prediction happens silently, beneath conscious awareness. You experience it only through the subtle sense of knowing or expecting, through the feeling of familiarity or the feeling of surprise. This predictive nature is also one reason why time feels coherent inside your mind. Even though memory is reconstructed and imagination is fluid, the brain works tirelessly to create a narrative that feels consistent. It stitches events together into a story, connecting the person you were with the person you are becoming. When that narrative is disrupted by loss, trauma, sudden change, or unexpected detours, the brain often returns to memory or imagination to rebuild coherence. It revisits old moments, searching for clues. It imagines new futures, searching for direction. This is the deeper reason why time travel holds such emotional power. It symbolizes the wish to repair the narrative when it feels broken, to find meaning when threads feel scattered. Our longing to revisit the past or explore the future is not only a curiosity, it is a response to the mind's natural architecture. When your internal narrative feels unclear, you instinctively reach toward the moments that shaped you or the moments that might help you understand what comes next. The desire to step through time becomes a way of seeking coherence, a way of aligning your inner story with the world around you. And perhaps this is the most human aspect of our fascination with time travel. We are storytellers. We need our lives to make sense, to unfold in a way that feels meaningful. When life surprises us, we return to memory to understand why. When life confuses us, we imagine the future to see where we might go. These movements are the internal compass guiding us through the ever-changing landscape of our days. As your breath settles gently, you might sense the quiet power of this inner architecture. It holds your past, your hopes, your fears, your growth, your dreams. Within it, time becomes something more than a sequence of minutes. It becomes the fabric of your identity. And it is this fabric, constantly woven and rewoven, that invites us to dream of travelling through time, not for adventure, but for understanding. When you're ready, just let me know, and we can drift softly into the next phase of our exploration, where the outer edges of time, shaped by physics and philosophy, begin to reveal their quiet mysteries. There is a quiet idea in physics, one that does not rush, or bend, or demand equations to make itself understood. Instead, it sits patiently, like a vast tapestry waiting to be noticed. This idea is sometimes called the block universe, a way of seeing reality not as a stream of moments flowing past us, but as a single, four-dimensional landscape where every moment, past, present and future, exists at once. You can imagine it as a long, beautifully woven cloth. Each thread is a moment in time. Each layer is a place you once stood or will someday stand. Nothing is deleted. Nothing is erased. It all simply exists, spread across a cosmic canvas. To understand this gently, imagine your life as a book. You may be reading the middle chapters right now, but the earlier pages are still there behind you, and the later ones are waiting quietly ahead. You can flip back to page 10 or forward to page 200. The story is already written as a whole, but your experience of it, the way your eyes move across the words, the way your understanding grows, is what creates the feeling of time flowing. The block universe suggests that reality might work a little like that book, not because fate is fixed, and not because the future is already decided, but because space and time may be different aspects of a single cosmic fabric. In everyday life, we move freely through space. We can walk left or right, forward or backward, but we move only one way through time. We move forward, with no visible way to turn around. And yet, in the physics behind this idea, time is simply one more direction. Not a river, but a dimension. If you picture this softly, space-time becomes a great map. Every place you have ever been is a point on that map. Every moment you have ever lived is another point, and all of them exist at once, spread across the landscape. From your perspective, you can only stand in one spot at a time, but the other places don't vanish. They remain part of the whole picture. This idea grows from the theory of relativity, but we do not need equations or symbols to feel its meaning. Relativity simply tells us something gentle, that different observers, moving at different speeds or standing in different places, may disagree on when a moment happens. If two people see the same event from different angles, one moving, one still, they may place it at different times. This doesn't mean either perspective is wrong. It means that time is not an absolute line shared by everyone. It bends and shifts depending on how you move through the universe, like a soft ribbon fluttering in a breeze. When you imagine that fluttering ribbon, you can begin to sense why physicists see time as a dimension woven into space. And if time is a dimension, then every point on that dimension, the moment you were born, the moment of your first heartbreak, the moment you will feel joy again, may all exist within the same cosmic fabric. The emotional weight of this idea is subtle, but profound. If past and future moments are real in their own way, then the people we loved, the feelings we once held, the versions of ourselves we've grown beyond, they are not lost, but simply located elsewhere on the tapestry. We cannot touch them because we no longer stand in that part of the landscape, but the moments themselves still shimmer quietly, threaded into the structure of the universe. Some people find comfort in this. The idea that the past is not gone but simply over there, still woven into reality, offers a sense of peace. Others find mystery in it, the possibility that our lives are larger than the narrow slice of time we currently occupy. And some feel a bittersweet longing. If the block universe really is like a story already laid out on the page, then our desire to revisit certain chapters becomes even more understandable. It is not the wish to rewrite anything, but the wish to stand once more in a place that still exists somewhere in the vastness. Humans instinctively sense this possibility in tender moments. When we remember someone we've lost, we sometimes feel as though they are still present in a deep, quiet way, not physically, but within the timeline of our life that continues to exist behind us. When we dream of the future, we sometimes feel as though we're reaching toward a moment that already has shape. This intuitive sense, the feeling that time might be something we inhabit rather than something we chase, echoes the block universe in a gentle, emotional form. The longing for time travel often comes from this intuition. We feel, on some inner level, that the past is not destroyed by the passage of time. It is simply out of reach, and the future is not something we create from nothing. It is something we are walking toward, something with the potential for shape and colour already forming at the edges of our imagination. Of course, this idea does not require us to believe that life is predetermined. The tapestry metaphor allows for many possibilities. Perhaps the threads are woven by our choices as we make them. Perhaps the landscape grows as we walk through it, like frost patterns forming on cold glass. The beauty of the block universe is not in certainty, but in perspective. It invites us to step back and see our life not as a narrow line, but as a vast terrain filled with meaning. When you drift through this idea gently, you might sense how comforting it is to imagine that time is not rushing past you, taking things away. Instead, time becomes something layered, spacious, and rich. The moments you treasure still exist within that space. The moments you fear are simply places you have not yet visited. And the present is the point at which you touch the tapestry, feeling its texture beneath your fingertips. As your breath settles into its natural rhythm, imagine yourself standing on the edge of that vast landscape, past behind you, future ahead of you, all woven into the same soft fabric. You cannot walk backward or forward all at once, but you can feel the presence of those other moments around you. They shape you, support you, and give depth to your existence. If you wish, just let me know, and we can drift gently into the next part of this journey, where paradoxes and loops reveal how the mind dances with the impossible, and why our imagination is drawn to stories that fold time back onto itself. There is a special place in the world of ideas where logic softens, where the rules we believe to be unbreakable begin to shimmer at the edges, and where imagination takes gentle steps into territory that confuses and delights us at the same time. This is the realm of time paradoxes, the puzzles that arise when we imagine moving backward or forward through the timeline of our lives in ways the universe may not be built to allow. These paradoxes are not just scientific curiosities. They are stories, shaped by emotion as much as by logic, revealing something about how the human mind seeks meaning even when confronted with the impossible. One of the most famous examples is sometimes called the grandfather paradox, though the name is only a doorway into a deeper idea. Imagine softly that you step back into the past and alter one small moment in your family line, a moment that ultimately erases your own existence. If you never existed, you could never have travelled back. And if you never travelled back, nothing would have been changed. The story folds back onto itself like a ribbon bent into a loop. The edges meet, but the sequence refuses to settle. We're left with a question that has no comfortable answer. But the paradox is not just a puzzle. It reflects something human, a longing to influence what has already shaped us. We want to imagine being able to repair what feels broken, erase what feels painful, or restore what feels lost. But once we attempt to picture this intervention with too much precision, the story trembles. It reveals how deeply interwoven our lives are, how even the smallest change ripples outward, altering the world in ways we cannot predict. The paradox reminds us that life is a delicate web, and tugging one thread can shift the entire pattern. Another idea that gently challenges the mind is the causal loop, where an event becomes its own cause in a circular way. Picture a future scientist who receives a mysterious notebook filled with groundbreaking discoveries. Inspired by the knowledge inside, they dedicate their life to understanding the universe and eventually produce the very same notebook, sending it back in time. The notebook has no true beginning. It is carried endlessly between past and future, like a whisper passed around a circle. This kind of story is not meant to be analysed with strict logic. It is meant to evoke a feeling, the sense of standing before a mirror that reflects endlessly into itself. These loops invite us to question our everyday assumptions about time. We think of cause followed by effect, like footsteps following one another across sand. But paradoxes show us what happens when those footsteps curve gently and begin to overlap. They form patterns that seem impossible, yet strangely poetic. They challenge our minds not to frustrate us, but to reveal that reality may be more mysterious than we typically imagine. What fascinates humans about these paradoxes is not the logic alone, it is the emotional resonance embedded within them. In the grandfather paradox, we are confronted with the thought of undoing ourselves, a soft reminder that we cannot escape the consequences that shaped who we became. In causal loops, we encounter the strange beauty of something existing without a clear beginning, a symbol for how some ideas feel timeless, as though they were always waiting for us, even before we discovered them. Some paradoxes are gentler, almost playful. Imagine receiving a message from your future self, advice, a warning, a piece of wisdom. If you follow the advice and avoid the danger, then the future version of you had no reason to send the message. But if the message was never sent, then you would not have avoided the danger. Once again, the loop folds neatly, like a soft crease in paper. These scenarios don't frighten us. They intrigue us because they offer a glimpse of connection between the person we are now and the person we might become someday. They suggest that our future self might care enough to reach back and guide us. Underlying all of these paradoxes is a question humans often carry quietly. Can we ever truly change the past? Or is the past a fixed foundation on which the future must rest? When people imagine travelling through time, they rarely picture themselves as bystanders. They imagine correcting something, saving someone, saying something they never said. They imagine healing what still hurts. Paradoxes gently remind us that change is never simple, and that the outcomes we hope for might ripple far beyond our intentions. This is why philosophers and scientists often frame paradoxes not as barriers, but as invitations. An invitation to think more deeply about the nature of time, responsibility, and identity. They challenge us to consider whether time might have its own internal logic, one that does not always match the logic we use to understand everyday life. They remind us that our longing to travel through time is tied not to physics but to emotion, to guilt, love, curiosity, fear, and hope. When you step into the world of paradoxes, you are stepping into a mirror-lined room where every reflection raises a new question. What if changing one moment alters everything that follows? What if some moments are anchored so firmly that they cannot be moved? What if time has a shape we cannot yet see? A shape that curves back on itself in gentle, unexpected ways? As you breathe softly, consider how these paradoxes echo experiences in your own life. There are decisions you made years ago that continue to shape you. There are chance encounters that change your direction. There are words you spoke or left unspoken that still ripple quietly within your memory. These moments form loops of their own, a personal version of a causal chain. Even without travelling through time, your life contains circles, echoes, and returns. In stories, paradoxes give us a way to explore the boundaries of what we believe is possible. In life, they remind us that we often stand at the edges of understanding, peering into a mystery that grows deeper the more we contemplate it. They encourage humility, curiosity, and wonder, the qualities that make exploration meaningful. Perhaps this is why we return to these puzzles again and again, not to solve them, but to feel the gentle thrill of brushing against the impossible. Time travel paradoxes are mirrors that invite us to see the strange beauty of our own choices, the fragility of our timeline, and the profound interconnectedness of cause and effect. When you're ready, just let me know, and we can drift deeper into the emotional terrain of time travel, into the place where the consequences of changing the past begin to reveal their heavy weight and tender questions. There's a moment in nearly every time travel story, even the most whimsical ones, where the characters pause and hesitate. The idea of stepping into the past or leaping into the future is thrilling, but the closer they get to actually doing it, the more the weight of the decision begins to settle. Time travel is not simply a question of physics or technology. It is a question of responsibility, a question of consequence, a question of how much power a single choice could carry if that choice could ripple across years, lives, or entire histories. If you imagine, softly, stepping into the past, you might picture yourself entering a familiar moment, a childhood living room, a street corner from years ago, a conversation you remember vividly. At first, the thought is comforting, but then another thought follows, the awareness that even the smallest action could alter the world that grows from that moment. A kind word might save someone pain. A careless movement might derail someone's future. The past is delicate, like a spider web stretched across countless choices. Touch one strand, and vibrations travel outward in ways you may never fully understand. This idea is sometimes expressed in stories through the image of a butterfly, the flutter of its wings, sending tiny ripples through the air that eventually grow into winds and storms. In reality, the metaphor doesn't require any animals or weather. It simply reminds us that in complex systems, tiny shifts can have far-reaching results. A small decision made in the past could lead to an entirely different present, a moment of kindness, a moment of anger, a hesitation, a word spoken or swallowed. Each of these is a thread in the tapestry of your life. Pull one thread too hard and the pattern changes. This awareness is what makes the fantasy of time travel both beautiful and heavy. If you could change one thing, would you? Should you? These questions don't have easy answers, because the past holds not only the painful moments, but also the moments that shaped who you are. Even events that caused suffering may have taught you resilience, compassion, or clarity. Changing one experience might erase lessons that later became essential. Saving someone from one sorrow might create a different sorrow down the line. The web of life is too interconnected for certainty. Imagine, for example, going back to prevent someone from making a mistake. You might save them from one future burden, but in doing so, you might deprive them of the learning that mistake would eventually bring. You might shield them from pain, but also from growth. Time travel stories often explore this tension. Characters learn that saving someone from heartache can sometimes diminish their strength. Preventing a moment of loss can sometimes erase the very bonds that arose from the healing that followed. There is also the emotional burden of knowing more than you should. If you could see the future, you might witness joys that make your heart swell, but you might also witness sorrow that you're powerless to prevent. Imagine seeing a future where someone you love struggles, or where you yourself face something daunting. Carrying that knowledge back into the present would be a heavy weight. You might feel desperately compelled to change things, yet uncertain whether your interventions would help or harm. Even glimpsing your own future success could create unexpected pressure. If you saw yourself achieving something meaningful, you might begin to worry about how to reach that point, turning a moment of hope into a quiet source of anxiety. Each piece of future knowledge carries emotional complexity. Time travel would not only alter events, it would alter hearts. There is also a deeper ethical question. If you could reshape the timeline to improve your own life, should you? Or would that privilege come at the expense of someone else's path? Imagine stepping into the past to pursue an opportunity you missed. You might change your personal story for the better, but you might also take that opportunity away from someone else. If you remove one obstacle in your life, you might inadvertently place it in another person's path. This is why many philosophers describe time travel as a mirror. It forces us to examine what we value, what we fear, and how we understand responsibility. In the present, our choices have consequences too, but those consequences unfold naturally, shaped by the complex interplay of all our lives. In the context of time travel, the consequences become magnified. Every choice becomes amplified by its potential to reshape entire spans of time. Even the emotional experience of revisiting the past carries weight. Imagine standing once more in a moment when someone you love was still alive, seeing them, hearing them, feeling the warmth of their presence. It would be overwhelming. But when the moment ends, you would have to return to the present, knowing with fresh clarity what you have lost. The sweetness of the return might be outweighed by the pain of leaving again. Some time travel stories explore this deeply, the idea that the heart may not withstand the ache of reliving a moment that can never be kept. On the other hand, imagine stepping into the future and discovering something wonderful, a dream fulfilled, a relationship blossoming, a life unfolding with grace. The risk is that you might become fixated on reaching that future, losing the subtle beauty of the present moment. The timeline ahead might begin to feel like a destination rather than an unfolding journey. You might measure every step in terms of how close it brings you to what you saw, instead of noticing the richness around you. Time travel, whether into the past or future, would test the boundaries of empathy. If you saw someone hurt in the future, would you try to change it? If you saw someone safe only because of a difficulty they endured, would you let the difficulty remain? You would be holding knowledge that no one else has, creating a quiet loneliness. You would stand apart from the natural flow of time, caught between wanting to protect others and fearing the consequences of intervention. These dilemmas reveal something profound about the human condition. We long for control because we long for certainty, safety, and meaning. But the very fabric of time resists such control. Its unpredictability is what makes life so delicate and precious. If we could alter time freely, the world might become less grounded, less connected, less human. In the end, the ethical and emotional costs of time travel remind us of a simple truth. Some moments are beautiful because they can never be changed, only lived. Some lessons have value because they unfold naturally. Some joys are precious because they are fleeting, and some losses are meaningful because they shape us in ways we never expected. As you breathe softly and comfortably, you may sense that the allure of time travel is not really about changing the past or controlling the future. It is about understanding the power of every moment, how fragile it is, how interconnected it is, and how deeply it shapes who we become. When you're ready, just let me know, and we can drift gently into the next part of this journey, where time, identity, and the stories we tell ourselves begin to intertwine. There are moments in life, quiet, unhurried moments, when you feel the threads of your own story stretching out behind you and ahead of you, forming a tapestry only you can see from the inside. These threads are not made of years or dates, but of experiences, memories, hopes, and truths that shape who you believe yourself to be. Identity is not a fixed object. It is a story you tell yourself every day, sometimes consciously, sometimes without realizing it. And this story, with all its twists and turns, all its joys and uncertainties, exists only because time moves the way it does. As you rest a little more deeply into your breath, you might sense the subtle ways your past, present, and imagined future weave together inside you. The things you've survived, the kindnesses you've given, the mistakes you've made, the lessons you've learned. Together they create a sense of continuity, a feeling that you are the same person who lived through all those earlier moments, even though you have changed in countless ways. This inner story is fragile because it depends on the flow of time. If time were not linear, if moments did not follow one another in sequence, it would be difficult to know who we are. The idea that yesterday becomes today, and today becomes tomorrow, gives shape to identity. It allows us to say, I was this, I am this now, and I hope to become that. Without this structure, our sense of self would drift. We need time, not just as a dimension of physics, but as the quiet foundation on which our personal narrative stands. And yet, identity is not built only from lived experiences. It is also shaped by the stories we tell about those experiences. Two people can face the same event and carry very different identities afterward, depending on how they weave that event into their inner narrative. One person may see a difficult moment as evidence of resilience. Another may see it as proof of failure. The event is the same, but the meaning becomes personal. In this way, identity is less about what happens, and more about how we integrate what happens. This integration process mirrors the way memory is reconstructed. Each time you recall an event, you reshape it slightly. Each time you tell the story of your life, to yourself or to someone else, you adjust the narrative. You emphasize different details. You reinterpret the emotions. You create coherence where there was once confusion. You soften edges that once felt sharp. Over time, this repeated storytelling builds the foundation of who you believe you are. This is where the longing for time travel becomes intimately connected to identity. When people wish to revisit the past, they are often seeking insight or healing, not simply reliving events. They are looking for missing pieces of their story, pieces that might explain why they feel the way they do, or why certain patterns repeat, or why certain moments stay with them while others vanish. A trip into the past in this emotional sense is a search for coherence, a search for understanding. Similarly, when people imagine travelling into the future, they are often seeking a glimpse of who they might become. Not just what the world will look like, but what they will look like, emotionally, spiritually, personally. They want reassurance that their story continues in a meaningful way. They want to see the version of themselves who has grown through current challenges, who has found clarity or peace. Time travel then becomes a way of reaching toward a future identity, one that feels just out of sight. But identity is not only shaped by memory and imagination. It is also shaped by rupture, moments when life shifts suddenly, leaving the story incomplete, fragmented, or unclear. These breaks can come from loss, trauma, unexpected change, or transitions we didn't anticipate. When identity becomes uncertain, we instinctively reach for the past or future to try to rebuild coherence. We revisit old memories, trying to understand what they mean now, or we imagine new futures, trying to see where the next chapter might lead. This instinct reflects the deeper truth that humans are story creatures. We cannot help but interpret our lives as narratives. We look for arcs, turning points, lessons, meanings. We want our experiences to connect, to form something whole. When the story becomes confusing, the desire to travel through time, mentally or imaginatively, intensifies. We want to see the missing chapters. We want to fill in the blank spaces. We want to understand ourselves in a way that feels continuous. This is why certain memories linger, not because they were dramatic, but because they hold symbolic meaning. A moment of kindness might represent the person you want to be. A moment of fear might represent a part of yourself that still needs healing. A moment of courage might represent the strength you didn't realize you had. These memories become landmarks in your internal landscape. You return to them not to change them, but to feel grounded in who you are. In a similar way, imagined futures become emotional signposts. You picture yourself achieving a dream, not because you can predict the future, but because that dream reveals your values. You picture yourself healing from something painful, not because you know the exact path, but because you believe healing is possible. The future becomes a canvas for identity, a place where you project who you hope to become. Even if the details change, the longing remains consistent. It shows you where your story wishes to go. This is why the fantasy of rewriting the timeline feels so powerful. When identity feels fractured, the mind yearns for the ability to revise the parts that feel unclear or painful. It imagines stepping back to clarify misunderstandings, strengthen relationships, or protect a younger version of yourself. These fantasies are not about manipulating history. They're about restoring coherence to the narrative of your life. But the truth is softer and more profound. Identity is not fixed by the past, nor by the future. It is shaped by how you hold those moments in the present. The past informs you, but it does not imprison you. The future inspires you, but it does not dictate who you are. Your story is something you write gently, day by day, chapter by chapter. As your breath flows evenly, you might sense how your own narrative stretches across time, how the person you were, the person you are, and the person you hope to become all coexist within you, like different rooms in the same home. You carry them all, and each one shapes the way you walk through the world. Time travel, in this emotional sense, becomes a metaphor for moving through those rooms with compassion, curiosity, and understanding. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and we can move softly into the next part of our journey, where mortality, meaning, and the fragile beauty of our limited time begin to shape the deepest wish of all, the wish for just a little more time. There is a gentle truth that sits beneath every human life, one we rarely speak aloud, though we feel it in moments of stillness. Our time is limited. We carry this truth quietly, like a stone in the pocket, sometimes forgotten, sometimes heavy, sometimes grounding, sometimes frightening. Every person, no matter their age or path, knows on some deep level that their story has a beginning and an end. And this awareness, soft as it may be, influences nearly everything we do. The choices we make, the dreams we chase, the people we love, and the moments we treasure. As you rest into this moment, you may notice how the passage of time feels different when you think about life's finiteness. For some, it brings a sense of urgency, an inner voice that says, "Make the most of this." For others, it brings a longing, a wish for more time, more moments, more days to spend with the people who matter. And for many, it awakens a quiet fear, not of physical death itself, but of the thought that there are things they may never get to experience, words they may never get to say, or versions of themselves they may never become. This gentle fear is often called the anxiety of finitude, the awareness that our time is fragile, that we're walking along a timeline with no way to slow it down or expand it. Humans feel this more deeply than any other species because we are able to imagine our future in vivid detail. We can picture years that have not yet happened, and in doing so, we can picture the point where those years eventually run out. This awareness shapes our relationship with time more profoundly than we realize. It is not surprising then that time travel, especially the fantasy of escaping the limitations of time, holds such deep emotional power. When people say they wish they could travel through time, they are often expressing something subtler, a desire to step outside the countdown of their own life, even for a moment, to escape the ticking clock, to pause or rewind, or stretch time in ways that give more room to the things they value most. Imagine softly having one more hour with someone you've lost, one more minute to hold their hand, hear their voice, or say something that was left unsaid. Imagine having the ability to slow the passing of a perfect evening, to savor it fully instead of watching it dissolve into memory. Imagine pausing a moment of joy long enough to memorize every detail. The way the light fell across the room, the way someone smiled, the way your heart felt open and safe. These fantasies do not arise from selfishness. They arise from love, from the deep wish to hold on to what matters. Fear of the end is not simply fear of disappearance. It is fear of separation. Separation from the people we hold dear, from the future selves we hope to grow into, from the unfinished pages of our personal story. Time travel, in its symbolic form, becomes a way of imagining connection beyond the limits of mortality. If we could travel to the past, we could feel close to those who are gone. If we could travel to the future, we could reassure ourselves that our story continues in some meaningful way. Even the desire to see the distant future, to stand centuries ahead and witness how humanity evolves, reflects this longing. We want reassurance that our existence, though brief, contributes to something larger, that our lives are threads in a fabric that stretches beyond us. Time travel offers a symbolic perspective where our smallness becomes part of a grand, continuous whole. There is also a softer form of this longing, the wish to escape the pressure of time itself. Many people feel that time pushes them forward too quickly, rushing them through stages of life before they feel ready. Childhood ends, friendships drift, opportunities appear and vanish. The face in the mirror changes quietly each year. This constant movement can feel overwhelming, as though life is always nudging us along without allowing us to fully absorb the moments we're living. In those moments, the dream of stepping outside the flow of time becomes appealing. Not to flee from life, but to rest, to breathe without the feeling of being hurried. Time travel becomes a metaphor for spaciousness, a desire for moments that stretch gently rather than collapse under the weight of responsibilities, expectations and urgency. Mortality also shapes our understanding of meaning. We often don't appreciate the depth of a moment until it becomes a memory. If we lived forever, perhaps we would lose the ability to sense beauty in ordinary things. A sunset might feel less precious. A conversation might feel less important. The knowledge that moments are fleeting is what gives them radiance. The limitations of time give value to the time we have. This is why some philosophers suggest that the awareness of death is what allows us to truly live. It encourages us to cherish the people around us, to pursue dreams that matter, to forgive more quickly, and to hold compassion more closely. The finiteness of time reminds us that every interaction, every day, every breath is part of a story that will not repeat in exactly the same way again. And yet, even with this understanding, it is natural to wish for more time, more chances, more experiences, more growth. This wish does not conflict with acceptance. It is simply a reflection of how deeply humans care. The desire for time travel in this context becomes a quiet expression of love, for life, for others, for the world itself. As your breath moves gently in and out, think of the moments you treasure most. They likely did not last long. They may have been simple: a quiet morning, a shared meal, a walk with someone you care about. But they linger in memory because they touch something essential within you. The wish to revisit such moments is not a rejection of the present, it is an acknowledgement of their meaning. In the end, mortality does not diminish the value of our lives, it shapes it. It encourages presence, it deepens connection, it gives weight to joy and purpose to hope. And the desire to travel through time is simply the most imaginative expression of a deeper truth. We wish to hold close the moments that matter, to understand the path we've walked, and to feel that our story, however limited, is woven with significance. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and we'll drift gently into the final session, where the present moment becomes the quiet centre of all our longing, our memories, and our imagined futures. There is a gentle truth that sits at the centre of our entire relationship with time, a truth so simple and so quiet that it can be easy to overlook. All of our longing for the past, all of our dreams of the future, all of our curiosity about the nature of time itself ultimately lead us back to the same place. This moment, the present, the only doorway we can actually step through, the only point on the vast tapestry of time where our feet truly touch the ground. As you settle into a comfortable position and let your breath find its natural rhythm, you might notice how the present seems both small and infinite. Small because it lasts only an instant, infinite because it is the place where your entire life is experienced. Every memory you hold was once a present moment. Every future you imagine will one day become one. All the threads of your identity, your relationships, your hopes and fears, they meet here in this quiet now. The present moment is often overshadowed by the weight of the past and the pull of the future. We carry regrets like soft echoes, replaying moments that cannot be changed. We carry hopes and worries like distant lights, imagining paths that have not yet unfolded. These movements are natural, rooted in the architecture of the mind. But they can sometimes cause us to overlook the one place where life actually happens. And yet, if we slow down just enough, we can feel something subtle. The past cannot claim us, and the future cannot govern us. The past shaped you, yes, it built the foundations of who you are, but it cannot reach forward and hold you in place. The future calls to you, yes, it invites you toward growth, toward possibility, but it cannot decide who you become. Only the present carries the power to shape your next step. When people dream of time travel, they are often seeking understanding, closure, reassurance, or meaning. They want to revisit a moment to understand its impact more deeply. They want to fix something that still aches. They want to glimpse the future to know that things will be all right. But beneath these wishes lies a more fundamental longing, the longing to feel whole, safe, and grounded in their own story. Time travel fantasies in their emotional essence help us explore these longings. They give us a way to imagine healing the past or easing the uncertainty of the future. But they also reveal a tender paradox. No matter where our minds wander, the only place we can act, choose, heal, and grow is here, in the present. This moment contains everything you need to begin again. It holds your breath, your awareness, your intentions. It holds the possibility of forgiveness, of yourself, of others. It holds the possibility of clarity, the chance to see something differently than you did before. It holds the possibility of choosing a new direction, however small. This is the quiet power of now, not as a command to ignore the past or future, but as an invitation to live fully within the space where your life is actually unfolding. The present moment is not always easy to stay with. It can feel restless when you're waiting for answers. It can feel heavy when you're carrying old pain. It can feel uncertain when you're trying to build something new. But this is also what makes it precious. The present is a space where transformation is possible. It is where you take the feelings and memories you carry and gently reshape them into something meaningful. If you imagine time as a great tapestry, the present is the point where your fingers meet the fabric. You cannot reach the threads behind you, they've already been woven. You cannot reach the threads ahead, they are still forming. But you can touch the thread beneath your hand right now. You can choose its colour. You can choose the next stitch. You can choose the direction the pattern moves. This creative power exists only in the moment you are living. When you look back on your life, the moments that shine most brightly are often the ones when you are truly present. A deep conversation, a quiet walk, a sudden realization, a tender hug, a moment of courage. These moments become anchors in your memory, not because they were extraordinary in their circumstances, but because you were fully awake within them. You were here, you were open, you were alive to the experience. The same is true for the future. The most meaningful futures are not built from grand visions alone, but from small present choices repeated gently day after day. The future grows from the soil of the present. Water it with attention and intention, and it will grow into something that reflects your deepest values. Even your relationship with mortality, your awareness that time is finite, can become a source of presence. Knowing that moments will not last forever encourages us to savor them. Knowing that people will not always be with us encourages us to cherish them. Knowing that life moves in one direction encourages us to hold each moment with tenderness, not as something to control, but as something to honor. The present moment is not about perfection. It is about awareness. It is about arriving fully in your own life, even if just for a breath, even if just for the length of a single heartbeat. When you return to the present, you are not abandoning the past or the future. You're gathering them gently, holding them both within yourself without being pulled too sharply in either direction. And so, as you breathe, you might allow yourself to feel the quiet truth beneath everything we've explored together. Time travel is not only a fantasy of impossible machines, it is a lens through which we examine what matters most to us. It reveals our longing to understand our past, to shape our future, and to feel grounded in the path between them. But the heart of all these longings rests in this moment, the only moment you can truly inhabit. This present moment is your doorway to healing old memories, your doorway to shaping new futures, your doorway to understanding yourself, and your doorway to living with a sense of calm and purpose that time, with all its mysteries, cannot take away. Thank you for drifting through this journey with me. Whether your eyes are open or already growing heavy, I hope this exploration has brought you a sense of peace, a feeling that your story, with all its twists and unspoken wishes, is worth honouring. And if you ever wish to wander through the quiet mysteries of the universe again, you will always be welcome here, in this soft corner of time where wonder and rest meet gently.